What's up folks, welcome back to another video. In this video we're gonna walk you through and show you the difference between Git and GitHub and how you can use them to build an application. If this is your first time on this channel, this is where we help you become a full stack developer. Please consider subscribing. Well, let's start with the first question, which is what is Git? Well, if we Google this, we'll find that Git is a distributed version control system for tracking changes in your source code during the software development. Now you might be wondering, okay, Sterling, what the heck is this? All right. Well, first let's think about the problem that Git is trying to solve for you to have a better understanding, right? Let's picture this for a second. Let's assume that we were working on a software, we were building this massive, crazy software that is going to change the entire world, right? Well, only me and my friend started working on it. And the fact that the two of us are working on that software, it is easy. There isn't anything that is going to be super complicated in terms of the workflow, right? It's only two person. We can easily send each other files and be like, hey dude, here's my updated code within this file. You can download this code and kind of put it to your main code and we can kind of work from there, right? However, as the team continue growing, let's assume that a couple hundred people join the project, a couple thousand people join the project. It's just going to look crazy. Imagine to work with that amount of people or sending every single person your files or your updated code and be like, hey everyone, I just finished with my stuff. Here's my updated code. Please everyone download my updated code. Make sure that you got everything up to date. And imagine if everybody was finishing at the same time, it would have just been a nightmare. So the working together on a big software would have been insane, right? So that's one issue. Well, let's assume that we have a client that we're working or building a project for. Well, the V1 of the project that we completed and show it to the client, and they're like, well, can you do that? And then we go back and do a version 2 for that client and we show them exactly what they wanted us to do. And they're like, well, can we do this? And then we go back again and do a version 3 and back and forth version 4, 5, and 6. And all of a sudden we're like, all right, you know what? This is getting too much. This is going to be your final version. You either take it or leave it. And then we come back to them and show them the final version. And then they're like, you know what? I think I like the version number 2, right? Now, in this case, you're going to have to redo everything back to version 2, right? What if there was a way with just one command, whichever version that your client wants you to go back to, with just one command, you can easily go back to any version of your code? Well, what if no matter how large your team is, or no matter what crazy software that you're building, then you can manage your entire team through just one system that everyone sends their code to, and the system automatically check and see if that person's code is up to date with the main code. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Git. Well, Git simplifies the process of working with other people and makes it easy to collaborate on projects, and it also makes it easy for you to revert back to any version of your code. Okay, Sterling, all of this you just said might not make sense. How do we get started with Git? Well, the way we get started with Git is if you head on Google and type the word download Git, you'll be able to kind of find a couple examples here. Number one is this. If you click on that particular link, you'll be able to download it for Windows, Mac, and Linux as well. This is one of the most easier way you can do that. However, if you are on a Mac, again, you can feel free to kind of go through that process and install it using your Mac computer. One thing you can do, you can scroll down to wherever you see Atlassian and click on this. And then here you can kind of follow this guide. I think this is a really great guide for you guys to kind of get Git installed into your computer. One thing we can do to verify, because most of the time that if you have a Mac, you might already have it installed. In fact, the best way to do that is by copy this command and verify if you have Git installed. It should give you something like this, either or not you are on Windows or Mac. Again, for Windows user, you definitely going to use something called Git Bash on your computer. After you install this, this is how you're going to go ahead to kind of find out if Git is installed. Again, this entire video is focused more on kind of show you guys how this whole process works. So once you have Git installed, you need to go here and copy this. I'm gonna go here and go back to your terminal. I'm gonna paste this in there and we move this with a username. In this one, I'm gonna move this one with a username like this and copy the same thing for the email. So I'm gonna copy that one and go back to my terminal and then do the same thing for that. And this time I'm gonna remove this email and kind of put my actual email that I want to use, which is this one, whichever my email that I use on most of the platform, and click enter. Well, the reason we set this one is because whenever we commit something is we want to be able to kind of see the author, some information about the author, such as the username and also the email that they set up using Git. So here is a very basic project that I have. Nothing basic here. If you take a look at that, this is a very simple static little website. Okay, all it is Git container. If I open this one into my browser, you can see this is what I have as a very simple application that we're going to work with. All right, so how can we use Git in this project to manage this entire project? Assuming that this was a massive project, again, we're going to walk you guys through exactly how you can work together on a large scale. Let's focus more on how we would go about working on a small project like this with Git. So the first thing that you need to do on a project in order for you guys to get started with Git, I'm going to open my terminal. So I'm going to drag this somewhere here, wherever I have this terminal. The other ways you could do that, if you go here on the terminal, you can open a new terminal and that should do that for you. And now there we go, we got this terminal. So the first thing you need to do is verify that you know exactly where you are inside your computer of where you're going to have Git track changes for you. All right, so I am inside this folder called Git demo, and this is an example on how this look like. I got Git demo, a file called app.js, index.html, style.css. So that means that when I'm gonna initialize Git in this project, Git is going to keep track of everything that I do with those files. So in order for me to start with Git, I need to type the command git init, and guess what this is going to do for me? It's going to initialize Git. Now you can easily see that the color of the file changes, and what that means is if you were using VS Code, which I'm using in this case, VS Code helps you work with Git very easily. So there are a lot of things that they already are taking care of for you, which is the way that the file changed. All right, so what does happen in this case? How does Git works whenever you work with Git? Well, the first thing that I want you guys to see in this case, which you might not be seeing here. Now check this out. If I can kind of come here inside the terminal and do ls-a to list every file, now we do have one new file that wasn't there before, which called .git. Okay, so that Git folder, this entire .git folder is the one that is going to track every single thing that we're doing here in these files. Now, if we do not have this, we do not have Git. Now check this out. If I do Git status to see the status, now Git turn every single files that we are modifying or working with into the color red whenever we do Git status. And the whole reason is because this folder is the one that is keeping no track of everything that we do, and instantly we put it in a way for us to kind of visualize whatever we are doing, and so on and so on. Now check this out. If I go here and we move that folder, which is the folder Git folder, and we move that folder, and now when I try to do Git status, and by the way, this command, go ahead and remove that entire folder. If I do Git status again, it doesn't recognize that Git command because, again, if you remember, this folder was the one that was keeping track of everything for us. So we're gonna have to initialize this again just to come back to where we are, and if we do that and kind of go ahead, we can see every single things that we're working on. Okay, so now before you can start working with Git, just remember that Git has a total of 3 different stages. Now you might be still on what the heck are stages? Don't worry, we're gonna walk you through and explain you what that means. If you remember when we did Git status, now this is one stage of what Git is tracking for you. So in this case, Git show us every single files that we are currently working on, that we're making progress, we're changing things, and all of that. Now this stage in particular, it's called modify. This is the stage that you're still doing some work in progress. All right, so whenever you're done, let's assume that, hey, I was done with the JavaScript file, or maybe I was done with the index.html file, then I'm gonna have to move this file to another stage. Now again, you might be still, okay, how do we move file between one stage to another? Well, in order for us to do that, we're gonna have to use a list of Git commands. One of them we're gonna be using, it's something called Git Add, and the file name you want to be added to the different stage. In this case, I want the index.html, and boom, if I do that, that file is there into that new stage. But how do I check check which stage is my files in. Again, this is where we do Git Status. Git Status will tell us exactly what stage our files are in. In this particular case, we can see here, this one, anything in red or inside the first stage, which is modify. Anything in green or inside this stage called stage, right? All right, but what about the commit, right? We saw the modify state, the stage, but what about the commit? And what is the commit stage? Why do we have to do all of that? Well, if you remember when we mentioned earlier that you can go back to any version of your code. Well, the commit one is the final stage of where your code is going to be. And this one is going to be the version of your code that you can go back to at any given time. 5 years from now, you can still go back to that version of code that you committed. So, but how do we do that? The way we do that is that we're going to do the git commit and then -m, which is a way to kind of enter a specific message that should be attached to that commit so that we can remember what this entire final stage was. In this case, I'm going to say version 1, setting up file structure, which is pretty basic, right? Now, remember that git commit is a way to kind of move things to the final stage, but does it move everything to that final stage? Well, let's find out. If I do git status, now check this out. I'm not saying whatever was in the second state, right? Which was the stage. What happened to it? Well, what really happened to it is this. Whenever you commit something, aka whenever you're moving to the final step, which in order to move to the final step, you have to do git commit, whatever that is. Well, what the git commit is going to do for you is it's going to take anything that was in the second stage, which means the things that it thinks that you finished with them, you completely done with them, then it's going to move that things to the final stage. It's not going to touch anything that you have within the modify state because you haven't finished working with them. Okay, so I'm going to do one more example. If I do git status, and then this one, I want to move this file to the final stage. So I'm going to go here and kind of do git add and the name of that file, which is this app.js. So I'm going to do that. So if I do git status again, and now you can see this one is inside the modified state, which is the first step. And this one is inside the stage state, which is the second step. Again, we want to move whatever is in the second step to the final stage. And in order for me to do that, I'm going to have to do git commit, add a message. Now, let's say the second one we're doing, wrapping up the JavaScript code. Now, this might not be a perfect example of message. I would highly recommend to add something very specific to what you've done in this file, just in order to kind of move that to the last stage. Check this out. And if I click enter, boom, there you go. That has moved to the final stage. And if I do git status again, you can see now we only have that last part remaining. But here's the beauty about VS Code, which is super awesome. As you moving things to the final stage, it will tell you what are the things that are not being worked on. For example, these two things, these are the two things that will move into the final stage. And if we take a look at the one that is in green, those are the things that are still being worked on. Now let's assume that we had a lot of different files. We didn't want to move them from one by one to the second stage and then commit them, right? We wanted to move everything. What if there was a way we can do that? Yes, there is. And check this out. In this case, I have two files that I want to move it to the stage state. So in this case, I'm going to go here and kind of do git add and that period and click enter. Now, if I do git status again, you can see now these two files automatically got moved to the second stage. They're ready to be committed. One thing I want to mention here, which is very important. Sometimes you might move something to the second stage, but you want to bring that things back to the modified state, which means, hey, I did not mean to do that. I want to bring these guys back to the working state or the state that is still being worked on. The way you can do that is you can do git rm -- cache and the name of the files you want to move that to the modified state. In this case, let's pick the main.js. And if I do that and do git status again, you can see now the main.js files bring back to the modified state, and we still have the style.css. And now we can feel free to kind of commit whatever was in the second stage, which was the style.css. We could say add it in another example, and boom, there we go. We got these things in the final stage. And if we do git status again, we still have the main.js, which we bring back from the second stage to the first one. Now, I know you might be still, okay, still, this is a lot. I'm not sure I understand, and that's okay. But what I really want you to get from this is, in order to work with Git, you're gonna have to get yourself familiar with these three different steps. The first one is the modify state, which is whatever you're working on, it's in that state. So whatever changes you're making, whatever things you're doing, Git by default is tracking everything that you're doing inside that state. Whenever you're done, in order to move to the final state, you can't go and be like, boom, let's move to the final state. You have to go to step number 2, aka state number 2. And the way you do that is by using Git Add, whichever files you want to add, and then you add that to stage number 2. Finally, you commit that as the final step. Well, let's assume that for some reason if you remember that this is the application we worked on, right? The index.js, which of course look like something like, let's assume for some reason we go back to this application, whoever worked on it completely misspelled the word container and literally messed up that entire description that we added, and this person completely messed this up, and then that person kind of go to that entire flow, it kind of do Git Status and then Git Add everything, and after it add everything to the second stage, then it's gonna move everything to that final stage. So I'm gonna go here and kind of say mess this up, right? And now if I go back, refresh my application, not only this word is misspelled, but my entire complete description is completely gone. What should I do in this case, right? Now check this out. Whenever you move something to the final state, not only it is in that final state, not only that, but also Git keep a track of a specific version for you. And what I mean is, if you do git log, you can see every single version that you had, or every single final state that you had within your application that you can go back at any given time. In this case, look at that. This is the one that I just committed not too long ago, that I committed this one at 1:30:34 seconds on May 4th. And then this is the message that I added. This is another one that I committed not too long ago. But what I want to do in this case, and again, you can kind of see the entire history of that specific version that you can kind of go back to. One of the things that is very, very useful in this case is adding that specific message that's going to tell you exactly what that version was all about. Now, let's assume that we wanted to go back to the working version that we wanted to work with, not like the completely messed up version. We wanted to go back to a one that was fantastically working. Well, what we can do is to get out of this, we press the letter Q. That will allow us to get out of this, to go back to that specific version. This is the version that is completely messed up. Okay, this is the one that is completely messed up. The one we want to go back to is this one. Now check this out. We do have a commit ID, so I'm going to copy this one and come back to my terminal, and I'm going to do git checkout in the ID here, and boom, when I do that, now, if I go back to the browser and refresh it, and there you go, I'm back to that version that we had, and we are back in business, which is really, really cool, which means we can go back in any time in history that we work with. And this is one of the most powerful things about Git. But is that really the way we work with Git on a professional level? Well, one thing we do whenever we're working with Git, what we do is whenever we're working on a team, we use something called branch. And as you can see here, it's already suggesting us to create a branch. Don't worry, we're going to go over that deeper. But the main thing that I really want you to take away from this is, based on the commit ID, you can kind of go back to any version, maybe 5 years, 7 years later, whichever version, you can instantly kind of go back to that particular version. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how we work using something called branches, and we're going to explore branches in a deeper. So you might be asking, Sterling, what the heck is a branch, right? Well, a branch is a way for us to make a copy of the master branch and kind of work based off that. Now you might be still, what the heck is a master branch, right? I don't think you mentioned this before, and that's okay. Now here's what I want you to get. By default, every single Git project you initialize, they do give you by default a branch named master. Okay, now here's, in order for us to see that, we have to do something called branch, and now there you go, you can see there, we can see now we are seeing the master branch. But what is this master branch? Now, this master branch is considered as the main source of the code. And as a developer, we should not be working on that master branch, which means that, hey, if I'm doing anything here, you shouldn't be working on the master branch. Now I'm going to give you guys an example. If none of the branching stuff makes sense, do not worry, that's okay. But here's a perfect example here. Now remember, this is how my application looks like. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new branch from the master branch. Okay, so I am on the master branch. I'm going to do, in order to create a new branch, I can do git checkout -b and then the name of the new branch. I'm going to call it version 1 and click enter. And now if I want to see every single branch I have, I do git branch again, and that's going to list. And there we go. Now I have 2 branches. I'm on the master branch and I'm on v1 branch. Okay. Now remember, this branch is a copy of the master branch. So whatever was in the master branch, I have it on this branch as well. Now check this out. I'm going to go back to the CSS and change this background color. Instead of light green, I'm going to change it to red. Okay. Now remember, whatever changes that we are doing it inside that specific branch. So whichever branch that you are in, any work that you do on your code, you are doing that work inside that specific branch. So the bottom line is, whenever you're working with Git, whatever you're doing it inside a branch, whichever branch that it might be. So I've done some changes. I'm going to go ahead and kind of put them to the final stage. So I'm going to go here and kind of say add everything. I'm going to commit everything here. So I'm going to go here, I'll change background color. And now if I go back inside my browser, if I refresh it, there you go, we do have a red color inside our page. Now check this out. Remember, we are still in the version 1 branch, but if I switch, and by the way, to switch between branch, you just do git checkout and the name of the branch you want to switch to. Now if I switch to the master branch here, I didn't do anything. Okay, I did not touch anything at all. When I go back to the page and refresh it, there you go, I go back to whatever version that the master branch is. So Sterling, what the heck is going on here? Well, here's what's going on here. Okay, so whatever changes that you do within the branch, it stays to that branch. Let me rephrase it. Whatever things that you've done, you could have gone and go crazy, change the entire application, whatever that you want to do within that branch, it's only going to stay on your branch and will never impact the main branch, which is the main source branch, which is the master code. Okay, now I can do one more example to kind of illustrate this point. So I'm going to create a new branch, and this time I'm going to create this branch. I'm going to call this one version 2. In your case, I would highly recommend to kind of give it a name specific to what you're working on. Maybe you're working on a feature, on a bug, give it a name that will relate it to what you're trying to fix. I'm going to change this one to black, and I'm going to change every single text color to white and see how that looks like. Okay, so here's this branch. I'm going to check out this branch. And then in this branch, I'm going to go here and kind of add everything. And then again, I'm going to commit them to the final stage. So I'm going to change background color. And boom, now if I go back to the page and refresh this one, we see now the background color changed to black and the text also changed to white. But remember, the changes that we've done, we only done that inside the version 2. So which means if I switch to version 1 and if I list the branch here, you see now we are in version 1. So if I go back, refresh this browser here, there you go. This is what version 1 had. And if I go back to the master branch here and making sure that I'm on the master branch, yes, I am. You can see here, this one highlight whichever branch that we are. And if I refresh this one, I'm back to the master branch, which is awesome, which is really, really great. So now this is the beauty of Git. As you working on a large team, every single person could be working with their own copy, and they could be making whatever they want to make, whatever crazy that they want to go, they can go as crazy as possible. Okay, so whenever they're done, whenever everybody is done, they're gonna go through an entire process, which we're gonna see in the next video. But let's do one final thing here before we end this video. Let's assume that, okay, remember, you should not be working on the master branch. Okay, so you should make a copy of the master branch, which means create a branch based off the master branch, and then you continue working on whatever you're working on. Okay, so let's assume that I was finished with version 1. Whoever was working on version 1 finished. How do we get that branch, or how do we get that changes into the master branch? Well, the way we do that is we merge whichever branch into the master branch. Okay, in order to do your merge, you have to make sure that you are inside the master branch. All right, so make sure that you switch to the master branch. When you are inside the master branch, I'm gonna do git merge, and then the branch that you want to bring in this case, I want to bring this one into, which is version 2. So I'm going to click version 2, and there we go. We bring whatever we had inside version 2 into the master branch. And remember, I'm into the master branch right here, and remember, this is how the master branch was. Now, the fact that we bring the changes from the version 2 into the master branch, which means every single thing that the version 2 had will now be inside the master branch. Okay, so if I go here and refresh this page, and now remember, this is how version 2 was, we bring it into the master branch. Now the master branch will contain code that the version 2 have. This is the entire process of branching. This is the entire flow of working on a team. Every single person work on their own version, and whenever they're done, they bring them back to the master branch. Now, one last things before we end this entire video, and this is one of the most complicated and scary part of Git, but don't worry guys, you almost there, you almost got it. Again, I'm not expecting you to fully understand this. It does going to require time in order for you to fully understand this. Okay, so check this out. We are inside the master branch here. If you remember, we brought the version 2 into the master branch. However, version 1, we had some code into the version 1. So in this case, let's assume that two people were working on something completely different. Okay, version 2 was working on something that was completely different, and version 1 was working on something that was completely different as well. Now we bring version 2 first into the master. Let's bring version 1 and see what happens. So in order to bring version 1, I'm going to do git merge. Again, make sure that you are on the master branch. When I do git merge, I'm going to do version 1. So I'll bring version 1. Now check this out. There's this big word here called conflicts, and not only that, VS Code, which is really helpful, gonna help us give us these red things on this file, and it tells us exactly where this issue is happening. Now the big question remains is, what the heck is a conflict, right? What is a conflict? Conflicts are something that you're always going to have whenever you're working with a team. Now, what is a conflict? A conflict is a way of Git telling you that, hey guys, you had two different versions that you were working on. For some reason, you guys both work or touch the same lines of code. If you remember, on version 1, we're changing the background color to be black. On version 2, we changed the background to be red, right? Well, now Git doesn't know which version that it should keep because you guys both touch the same lines of code. Now Git is a little bit confused in terms of which version that it should keep. Should it keep the version 1 or should it keep version 2, right? Well, Git is so smart, it automatically detects those changes and instantly telling you the difference using the word conflicts. It tells you that, hey guys, there are two things that you guys did that are completely the same. You guys touch this exact same lines of code. Please resolve that conflict in order for us to move on and continue with our workflow. And now if I go inside this file called style.css, I'm gonna go to that file, and there you go. This is how Git represent me this conflict. Now this might look scary, this might look like Sterling, this is scary, I have no clue what this is doing. Oh my gosh, like I'm hating Git. Don't worry, we're gonna show you exactly how VS Code makes it really awesome. Again guys, if you do not have VS Code, I would highly recommend you do, because this is one of the most powerful tools that Microsoft has ever built for developer, and it is something that is worked in a lot of professional environments, so highly recommend you use it. Now, how do we deal with it? Okay, remember we had in this case we brought version 2 first. Okay, version 2 is the one that we brought first. The second version which we want to bring is the version 1. Whichever branch that you kind of bring into the master branch, or whatever that merge is happening, is considered as incoming change. Now check this out. If I over this, there are a couple of little things that I can do here. Okay, so anything that you bring in are considered as incoming change. Anything that was already there, which again we had already the branches version 2 that was already there, is considered as the current change. change. And if you want to accept both of them, let's assume that we want to keep both of the changes, you can easily do that by clicking this button. Or if you want to compare them, you can easily do that using this compare things. Or let's assume that you still has some confusion, you still don't know which one to keep, you want to get on a call with whoever person that did that, then you can start a live share, which is completely out of the scope of this video. But what we want to do is this: which one do we want to keep? Do we want to keep the one that was already there, or do we want to keep the brand new one that is coming in? In this case, all I have to do is click accept incoming change and click save, and guess what? In this case, we keep the new one, and now if I refresh this page, boom, we got the new version that we accepted. The conflict has been resolved. If I go back and let's assume that we wanted to kind of keep the current one, we did not want to keep whatever one that is coming in, we just wanted to keep the one that we have. All we have to do is click on accept current change and save that. And now if I go back into the browser, we keep whichever one that we had. Again, this is the entire process. You might have conflicts within different files, and that's okay. VS Code makes it really easy for you guys to resolve that. Now, whenever you finish resolve the conflicts, you need to kind of go ahead and kind of commit them to the final stage. You go here and kind of do something like that, resolve conflicts, and then boom, we resolve everything. Now our master branch is up to date. We bring every single changes that we're working on, and now our master branch is up to date. Let's assume that we wanted to delete those branches because we no longer are going to use them. We already bring whatever we're doing in them into the master branch. Well, to delete them, you can do git branch -D in the name of the branch that you want to delete, which is version 1, and we'll do the same thing for version 2. And now those two branches are now deleted. If I do git branch again, and now these branch are gone, we only have the master branch now. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. We walk you guys through and show you exactly what Git is. We show you how we can start with it. We show you how to download Git by going to Google and kind of search for it, kind of go through that process. We show you how you can configure it, and then we show you how you can initialize a project by doing git init. We show you the different stages of Git, such as the modify, the stage, and the commit. And finally, we show you how to resolve conflicts, which is one of the most things that really kind of get people scared whenever they're using Git. And finally, we show you what they call branching, how you can kind of create a branch and kind of work on that branch and then merge them into the master branch. So far you have learned a lot just using Git. But check this out, right? Remember from early in this video, we mentioned that Git solved two problems. The first problem is going back any given time to a specific version, which we were able to see that within this video. Second thing we also mentioned is working on a large team, right? It kind of makes the process easy. But so far, we're working on our computer, right? How does our teammate are going to access our own computer and then work with us using Git, right? Like, how would that process happen? How would they manage to do that? Or would they even access our computer at all to work with us with Git, right? Like, how is this collaboration going to happen? Well, we're gonna see that in the next video, where we're gonna be using a Git repository hosting service, one of the largest hosts of source codes in the entire world. So coming up in the entire video.